Thank you for joining us today from the Public Library of Anniston-Calhoun County. I'm Sherry Blanton. I'm a Calhoun County Master Gardener, and some of you may know me as the Anniston Star Southern Gardener. I'm also, as my husband calls me, the Mad Gardener. I've been busy planting pansies, and we're going to take a look at those. We're going to be talking about winter interest. Right now, I've still got annuals and perennials blooming from the summer. We've got fall flowers, and we've got the beginning of the Camellia season. So we're going to be looking at all of these things and kind of putting it together and coming up with some ideas for your yard and some tips on how making your yard a more wonderful place. Everybody's spending so much more time in their garden. I know I am. I invest my life in this garden because right now it's my lifesaver. And I'd encourage anybody who needs a place to go outside, even if you put 6 pansies in a pot, and enjoy them. We're going to start in what I call my Rebirth Garden. After the tornado, this was all destroyed, and so I started all over again. And in the summer it has a lot of annuals, but I also have things that will be interesting all year. Over here you can see this is a color guard yucca. It just gets brighter yellow as the winter comes, and it's a perennial. It does have sticky leaves on it, but they're not terrible, and it is glorious in the winter because it keeps this color. The Lantana is over there. That is a summer annual, well, summer perennial. This is new Gold Lantana. Summer perennials, summer annuals. This is a perennial, and it will be covered with butterflies as soon as the sun is out. And in here, I've got some Encore Azaleas. The Encores are going through their second bloom. Mine actually did better this time of the year than they did in the spring. But yesterday, there was a yellow butterfly just hovering everywhere. The butterflies will disappear in the cold, but right now they are a pleasure. I've got 2 Japanese maples, which provide year-round interest. I think they're as beautiful in the winter with the bare branches, because the branches are, the stems and the trunks are as interesting as the branches are when they're covered with leaves. I started planting my pansies. I went out to a place on Bynum Leatherwood Road where the people grow their own pansies. I had every intention to plant less pansies than I usually do, and they stacked my little 4-Ranger double for me to get home. So I've been planting pansies for 2 weeks. So that means I haven't been inside moping about the pandemic and being afraid to go to the grocery store, because all I'm worried about now is how to get all these pansies planted. But I hope, this is called the Sherry Blotch. So naturally I had to get this one, anything with my name. So when we walk down here, you can see that some of my summer flowers are still blooming. This is a wonderful flower called Texas Salvia, and it's blooming now, or autumn salvia, and it's doing really well now. This is another plant that we call a pollinator plant. Gardeners are really big now on pollinator plants because bees and butterflies are endangered, and so we're trying to plant everything we can in our yards to have them come in and feel welcome and have something to eat. I even see the hummingbirds out here, and I love this purple. It will bloom till the frost. It will start blooming in first of spring, and it blooms for months and months and months. So you get your money's worth out of this. I've been putting in sedum. It's turning colors. It was bright pink, but I even like the rust color. It's been blooming actually since probably last May, and it's just turned colors. Now it will die back, but you can leave it, and you get that interest in the winter of that rust color. We walk down here, and this is one of my favorite flowers in the fall. It's called it's a hybrid Japanese anemone. I'm gonna hold up one of the flowers. I've had it in my yard about 15 years, but when the tornado took down all the trees, it got a lot more water, and it started to bloom like crazy. It does get kind of leggy. That's one of its only problems, and so you have to get a high stake or just be happy with it bending over. This is called deer salad bar. And the first time it blooms, I'll come out here and discover that the deer have had their brunch snack, or maybe it was their breakfast, and they've eaten all the flowers off. And I spray them with something that smells terrible, but they still come back and eat them. If you're looking for color in the winter garden, you can always use a loropetalum with the purple flowers, with the purple leaves, excuse me. It will have purplish pink flowers in the spring, but you can see how pretty it looks with the combination with the green. And this is a camellia, and I don't know if you can see, there are hundreds and hundreds of buds all over it, and it will probably try to bloom on the first frost. But this is called debutante, and I know some people's are already blooming. This one is showing color. But camellias are the go-to winter flower. These will bloom, into November, and at that point, you're gonna see the japonica camellias step out and start blooming. But you see how pretty these two are together. And for some reason, this camellia is this is not an encore. I've had it so long, I don't remember what its name is, but it has just decided to bloom, and it's beautiful. Y'all can see how the Japanese anemone makes itself at home anywhere it wants to go. I just dug up quite a bit and then felt so bad I planted them back. Folks, we had to dig up my water line, so from right up there to the spigot, we had to dig all the way up through my yard. I am blessed to have a wonderful landscape crew from Davis Landscape who came out, dug up this yard and put it back. And believe me, when I walked out, I could not even tell that anybody had been in my yard. I was hiding in the backyard because I did not want to see anyone. They came right down this path, went around the trees, went through the pots, and nothing got turned over. This is one of my summer annual pots that's still blooming. It's got caladiums, begonias, and vinca in it, and it's still beautiful. So, as I said, I have a mishmash. We've got summer flowers, we got fall flowers, we got winter flowers, and here's another Japanese maple. This is a beautiful Japanese maple that's in process. Excuse our recycling truck, but we're grateful that we have curbside recycling. It's starting to turn and it's starting to lose its leaves, but Japanese maple is really interesting without any leaves on it. I once went to a program about winter gardens, and one of the things that they suggested is to look at the bark on the trees. Like the bark on a dogwood looks like an elephant's skin. I love to stand under a tree and just look up at the sky and look at how the branches are formed, and that adds a lot of interest to a winter garden. This little tree is going to be bare before long, but you can see what a wonderful trunk it's got on it and the shape. This is called Yatsubushi, and it will have in just a few weeks. We're filming today, October 21st, so we haven't gotten our first burst of fall color yet, but this will be a beautiful color, lose its leaves, but it will still provide so much interest. This whole area right in front of us, from over there by the driveway to over here, was nothing but pink azaleas. During the pandemic, I was looking for things to do. So I called my faithful landscaper and I said, we're going to dig up all the azaleas. They're only pretty when they bloom, and if we have a frost and it kills the flowers, which we've had many times, and I have to come out here with the broom and knock off all the flowers because the neat freak gardener can't stand looking at brown flowers. And I had these maples all over the yard in pots. None of them will get very big, so they can all be in here. And we created this Japanese maple garden. And then I thought, well, you know what? Those maples look kind of lonely. Why don't we just see what else we could put out here? So then I started creating a pollinator garden around them, and we put out some salvia, some Gara, some drift roses. We've got one azalea in there that I kept. We've got some peonies that we've got in here. Then underneath we have a shade garden because there was a tree. And we just made a whole new place that has 4-season interest. Every garden needs 4-season interest. Azaleas are beautiful for 2 weeks, and then they're gone, and then the rest of the year they're maintenance because I had to keep cutting them or they hid my house, which I didn't want. So take a look at your yard while you're home in your garden and decide how you can make it better, and don't be afraid to change it. Change is good in the garden. Every few years you need to step back and say, hey, that doesn't look good, that needs to be in a different place, what can we do differently? And then go for it. And I did. I stood here and watched them dig up 47-year-old azaleas, and we put these trees in, and we stood back, and we were so happy. That's a nice big bloodgood, and it is beautiful in the winter. It's gorgeous in the fall, gorgeous in the spring, but it has a beautiful shape without any leaves on it. And it's an asset to my garden 4 seasons of the year. Next to it is a dogwood tree, and it's about half covered with berries because we have had flocks of birds. My neighbor said they were starlings descend into the yard, and you could just hear them squawking. They're not here today. And all of a sudden, they would fly out, and the sky would get black, and it was full of birds. So they will eventually get all the berries off the dogwood. But the dogwood has wonderful bark, so that's another interesting plant in the winter. And we're going to just walk back through here. Got more Japanese maples. This is a native azalea that won't bloom till next spring. I even planted an ornamental blueberry because the fall colors are beautiful. This is some more leftover summer annuals. Here's another beautiful Japanese maple that's going to turn bright red when it gets ready to. And when I said mishmash of the seasons, these hostas have not gone into dormancy, and they are still beautiful. But I have sedum as also some sedums, not all of them. Some go into dormancy. This one does not. It's called Ogon, and will look like that all winter. So you've got this burst of chartreuse in the yard, which I like. My new favorite flower are these two right here. They are called Carex. They look like this all year. So if your whole flower bed is empty, you've got these gorgeous plants. You don't trim them, you don't cut them back like you do Lirio. You just leave them, and they really are a wonderful accent in the wintertime. Coming back around here, here are some more of my, I put plants everywhere. Much to my husband's chagrin, there's no place without plants. Evergreens take a front seat during the winter. This one is Mahonia. It's just finished blooming. It's got kind of little pointed leaves on it, but it's quite, it stays this color. So the evergreens step forward in the winter to give you winter interest. And I don't know if you can see the bark. We'll get closer to it. And this is a conifer that I got and didn't have a place to plant it, so I put it in a pot. And this is our sump pump, and I'm using it as a pot trivet. And we were going to walk this way. Here are more Japanese maples, and they are starting to get a few of them are starting to get fall color. Now, when you're talking about things that will stay pretty all year, we've got heucheras, and I've got a lot of them. They stay that way all year long. So they bring a lot of winter interest and winter color because you can get them in red, chartreuse, green, purple. I even have a black one. So they bring your winter interest. And we've got some more little trees that are starting to turn. And these are trees, shrubs in the back. osmanthus, and I decided that they were too big and they were covering up my front window. And one of the rules of gardening is not to let your foundation plantings come over your window. So we cut them all back. So now you can see my ugly line, which is my special watering device, so I can water everywhere I want to. I wanted to come back and show you a couple more really special fall flowers, but you can see this group of Japanese anemones. You see that they can spread. I've given so many of them away to people, and I've never seen them in the store, and I don't even know how I got them. But here's a place where you can see deer sushi salad bar, where I came out one day and they had eaten most of the flowers. If we walk around here, here's a sedum that is going to stay, that one will stay green and purple all winter long. I started collecting clematis because I saw some and they're beautiful. They're fixing to go away. But here's another tree that's fixing to turn colors. But down here, I wanted to show you a wonderful, wonderful fall flower. Absolutely beautiful. And this one is pretty perfect. This is, and I'm gonna move over so that we can get a good view on it. This is a ginger lily, and the smell is absolutely heavenly. Now it's gonna go away when we get our first frost. I don't know if you could see this big old bee in here collecting some nectar. The pollinators love this plant, and the smell is just wonderful. Now I'm going to mention this just for people who are having the same problem I am. I have got black spot on my hydrangea, and I have seen this all over the internet. People asking, what is wrong with my hydrangeas? Well, we had a lot of rain. I had an overhead irrigation and consequently developed this ugly thing all over my hydrangea leaves. The only thing you can really do for it, once it's like this, there's nothing you can do, but when it first starts to leaf out in the spring, you can start spraying it with a fungicide. And the other thing I hate to tell you is you really need to pick up all the diseased leaves, because the rain, when it hits those leaves, bounces up the fungus on the leaves and keeps producing it. So I'm going to rake all the pine straw and all the leaves out of here, and next May, when the leaves first start coming on, I'm going to start spraying it, because this is really not very attractive. And one of the reasons that we love this hydrangea is because of the variegated foliage. This is a lace cap hydrangea, and as Jimmy Roberts at Golden Springs told me when I bought it probably 20 years ago, you buy it more for the foliage than you do for the lace cap flowers. So I'm going to try to prevent this next year. I thought about digging it up and trying to move it, but it's a special plant, so I'm going to just see what I can do to get rid of this before it ever comes out. And you can see in the background my Annabelle Hydrangea. The flowers are all turned sort of papery and brown, but I'm going to kind of leave them because I think it adds a little extra interest in the garden. It's, you know, some people may not think they're beautiful. We took some of them off. Next winter, a little tip on an Annabelle Hydrangea. You prune this hydrangea at the end of February. This hydrangea, a mop head, you prune by about July the 5th, whereas this hydrangea gets, a smooth hydrangea is pruned while it's dormant in about February, the 1st of March. We're going to walk around here because I have, now, my pitcher plants are really showing out today. Some of them are going dormant, but this one is not. Now, I don't know if you can get a close-up of this, but it's really it's really an asset to the garden, which I said the last time. I'm starting a new bog garden here, and I'm going to have different kind of bog plants in it. I'm going to have a cardinal flower and a swamp mallow, and probably I'm going to fill in with some more gingers. This is a fascinating ginger with this hood on it. And I've just learned there are nectar providers around the lip that attract insects. And when they come in and try to get a drink, they fall down in Never Never Land. And when they get down in the bottom, there are enzymes and whatever that dissolve the insects. And then these plants use them for nitrogen because they pretty much are used to living in nutrient-starved areas. And so then the insect provides nutrition for the pitcher plants. And although they are carnivorous, we do not feed them McDonald's. They eat crickets, maybe. They eat flies, they eat gnats, and they've been known to eat a frog. I've never had a frog getting here that I know about, but it's a fascinating way that a plant has evolved to survive. But you make a bog garden and there are no holes in it. Only holes would be to let excess rainwater because they like to live in water. And you can get another view of these dynamic Japanese anemones. When we walked down here, I just wanted to show you one of the real beauties in the yard. This is a Sasankwa, and it's been out here about 20 years, and we have to keep cutting it back or it'd be bigger than my house. And when I got it, it was this absolute pitiful little plant. And I remember somebody was helping me with my yard and said, that's not much of a specimen. And I thought, well, you ought to see it now. And I'm not sure if you can get a close-up of this gorgeous flower. But all of a sudden I'll come out and it's in full bloom. If you can see, it's probably got thousands of blooms on it. And over here, oh my goodness, I did not even know that this was blooming. This is Leslie Ann, who is probably my most favorite Sasankwa. I had a huge one that for some reason it passed away. So I got another one. This is the only place it would fit. But it will bloom for a while, and then its blooming season is going to be this fall. Of course, you've got a juga, which is a year-round ground cover if you need it. And this is a camellia it's a hybrid. It's called Tiny Princess. And the flowers will be itsy bitsy, but there will be hundreds of them. And for some reason, it's developing lichen on it, and I'm not sure why. I hope it's not feeling sad, because sometimes lichen comes when a plant is not healthy. But it will probably have, and you can see the little blooms on it. This will bloom in the winter, and it will have hundreds and hundreds of little tiny pink blooms. You can see the little flowers that are getting ready to come out. For those of you who love elephant ears, this would take the prize at the state fair. I got this from Hayes Jackson, and we measured the leaf one time, and it was well over 2 feet. Now it's getting ready to try to go into dormancy because it had many more of these leaves. And this elephant ear comes back every year, and I keep it mulched during the winter, and I just love it. I mean, there's no way man can make something like this, only nature. And if you can see, it looks like a water painting with all the different shades of green and the chartreuse. I'm really in love with this plant. I'm not going to say every plant's my favorite, but that's one of my favorites. And here's another one of those Texas Salvias. They come in lots of colors. And I masked my sedums. This is Autumn Fire. And I really love the fall. In the summer, these are bright pink. And I've actually clipped them off and used them for roses. But I love the kind of fall color when people start talking about fall and they wear rusts and oranges and browns. We have that in the garden too. And here's another little tip for gardeners who wondered, what in the world happened to my hibiscus? Aha! I wondered that myself, because every year, just as it's getting really beautiful, the leaves start looking like this. This is a plant called hibiscus sawfly. Comes from a moth, gets little bitty caterpillars all over the bottom. It hatches out. I was told they come out at night, and next year I'm gonna try to investigate and see what I can spray. But if you do spray, the little caterpillars are on the bottom of the leaves, so you have to spray the bottoms. And you can see how beautiful the leaves are. I love this color. When the sawfly doesn't get it, and one of them doesn't want to come off, so maybe I can hold it for the camera. The leaves are just gorgeous, but then they become like this. And so we walk around. We're going to walk all the way around through the front of the garden, and you can see the camellias and the dogwoods are starting to turn color, and the bloodgood is starting to turn color. And this is another fall bloomer. Mine is a little bit pitiful because I only have one, but it's called muhly grass. And you can see the pink fronds. That's another wonderful fall bloomer, and it will bloom till the frost. But these color guard yuccas are the key to having a winter glow, and they're not picky. If you don't want to water them, they don't care. They just want bright sun and a dry place. I'm sorry the butterflies aren't out yet, but the lantana is still blooming, and you can see that Japanese maple is going to be bright, bright red. And in front of it, that is a hardy begonia that spread and spread and spread and spread. And now I'm going to be giving it away to people, but I had some that were dark pink and some that this were baby pink. And I've left them because I think they're pretty. So we'll walk over to the next, and you can get a view of my Japanese maple garden. And you can see all the little maples, and some of them are beginning to throw on some fall color, and unfortunately they have powdery mildew, but this one does, but I'm not going to worry about it because these leaves will be gone. But you see what beautiful colors they are. Everybody that knows me knows that I have an affection for pansies. If you want to talk winter color, this is it. Pansies. They are blooming now. They will bloom all winter. They will bloom till it gets hot. And this is my pansy bed, and you can see the bees are visiting it because they're looking for a snack. And I just hope that the squirrels don't dig them up as fast as I put them down. And the deer might come in, so I'll have to spray them. But I've been in this house 48 years, and only 1 year have I missed putting out my pansies. But this is glorious winter color. And if all you can do is get a couple of containers to put on your front porch, the biggest things that pansies need is to pick off the spent blossoms so they don't go to seed. They're an easy plant, and they're beautiful. This will fill in completely, so it's going to be solid flowers. But I love being able to go to a nursery where they grew the pansies themselves. And they were little tiny babies when I got them, and I've enjoyed watching them grow up and stretch and start to bloom. This is a really dynamic Japanese maple called Waterfall, and it's starting to turn orange, and it will look like a little forest fire on its own. And then I'll just have the tree, and I'm not sure if I can pull up a limb so that you can see what the inside looks like, but it looks like a piece of sculpture. So that's a wonderful thing to have a Japanese maple in the winter. Now it takes a while. This one's been here a long time. It takes a while to get this big, but be patient and it'll happen. Again, we talked about the fact that I've got summer, spring, winter, and fall. What's fall without mums? These were grown in Calhoun County, and my summer flowers had just said, I can't stand this anymore, and they had all just faded away. So I was happy to put something cheerful out here, and I can look out my kitchen window. And everybody knows these are hard times. We're wearing masks, we're not wearing masks, we're afraid to get our hair cut. Some of us don't like to go to the grocery store. But you got flowers, and they're beautiful. And here's another one of my Camellia Sasankwas that's blooming, and it's covered with flowers. Over here, I'm going to actually pick one of these because I want to show it to you, and my car is in the way. So this is a Turks Cat Hibiscus, and every year there will be flocks of yellow butterflies, sulfurs, in here. Now this one likes to spread, so give it room, and they never open up. This is the full flower, but it's so interesting looking and really, really beautiful. But when the butterflies are in it, it's hard to be sad. Sometimes I just sit out here and watch what's going on, watch the birds that were in those trees, which have completely decimated my car and will have to be washed. And I try very hard not to walk under it when they're out there, but when they fly out, the sky literally does turn black. It's not an exaggeration. So another beautiful flower that is in its own right now. This is an annual florist chrysanthemum, and these right here, these salmon colors, are a perennial chrysanthemum, and they come back every year, and they just continue to populate this flower bed, and I think they're lovely, and I want to encourage them because the summer flowers have died back. And right there we have another Carex. We talked about the other Carex. This is a chartreuse one. I just recently put in all these ferns over here, and they are, some of them are autumn ferns, and they are going to have 12-month interest also. They are 12, now there's one in there that's probably going to melt away, but the majority of those will stay, so that's good winter interest. You can see over there, and I'll just walk over here just to point them out. Right here, the Linton Roses are coming up, and that's your true winter interest flower. They will start to bloom late December, January, and they will keep a flower on them through spring. They will come up pink and purple, then they will hold on to that, and then they'll go to kind of a green, and then they'll go to seed. But you see this big old bed they spread. They're self-seeders, and some people think that they're a nuisance, but I don't. I love them. Talk about winter interest from a tree. I love to stand next to this tree. Look at the wonderful bark on this tree. And then to stand up when it's empty and just look through all the branches at the sky. But this tree is gorgeous. Actually, we got this tree when my little boy was about 2 years old. And when we dug the hole, we put him in it to measure the hole. So this tree is about 39 years old. But I like to tell people all my plants have stories. And this is one of the first things I planted in this yard. It's a deciduous tulip tree, and it blooms in the winter, and every year I just keep my fingers crossed that we will not have a frost So the hundreds of blooms do not all turn brown, and I don't have to look at brown. But you can see that Sasankwa is covered with blooms, and then this beautiful tree circled by the Linton Roses. In about a week or two, I'm going to move these mums and plant these pots with yellow pansies, and then it'll be all winter long. I can look out the window and see something cheerful. That's important in January. Even when we're outside in the rain and the cold taking care of something. So we're going to walk all the way down. This is a Harry Lauder's walking stick. It is, yes, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous in the summer. But I want to tell you, in the winter, when all the leaves fall out and it's got all these curvy branches, perhaps you can see on this one, they're contorted. It's also called a Contorted Filbert, and it's already starting to get the little catkins. It's an ornamental, and it actually never produces any filberts, but it does have these wonderful catkins. And I think that you can probably see the shape of these branches. And although I like it with leaves, I like it better in the winter because it's like having a sculpture out in my garden. And as we were talking about the heucheras and what they can do for color, there's a dark green one, a chartreuse one that's getting some fall color, a green one, and these sedums stay chartreuse all year long. So there's another way to get some color in your garden. You can tell I like heucheras. This is the heuchera path, and I put them all over the place. Got peonies. This is an interesting plant, and also provides winter interest. It's an osmanthus or a tea olive, and it's got really pointed little leaves, so you have to stay away from it. And when the leaves come out in the spring, they're pink. I've got to show you this. This is Pinky Winky. I bought this last spring because I'd heard about it and because its name was Pinky Winky. It is a hydrangea, a Panicle Hydrangea, and normally, you saw my other hydrangeas, the leaves were all brown and sort of crinkled up. Look at this, it's perfect. And it's tinged with pink. I'm gonna move back and maybe we can get the camera up because I come out here every morning to look at that. Hey, I can be in the worst mood, stomping around in my house thinking I got to go to the grocery store and put on all my COVID gear, and I come out here and I look at this and I just go, I think it's here to remind me not to give up. It should not be blooming now. The rest of them are gone. This one's still blooming. Long past its time. It says, don't give up. You'll be able to go to the grocery store without all your gear on before long. This is a banana shrub that stays evergreen. And in the spring, it has fantastic smelling little banana flowers. Actually, they smell like banana toffee or a banana split. And you can see that the rhododendron is getting little buds all over it, and it'll be covered with big pink flowers. To my right by the fence is a Yuletide Sasankwa. Normally, it does not start blooming for a month or two, and this year, it's covered with blooms. And it's usually always blooming at Christmas, Yuletide. And I said to somebody, I guess it knew I needed a little Christmas cheer. Therefore, the bright red flowers, and you can see the bulbs, the little buds all over it. This one, it's just, it is going to be full. We walk through here, and the first thing you're going to see is Candy Cane, who is just blooming up a storm. This is a Sasankwa that's been in bloom maybe 2 weeks and will hang on until the frost bites it back. And I'm guessing it's got thousands of flowers. One of the biggest differences between a Sasankwa and a japonica is that the japonica have great big blooms and less of them, and the japonica has the big blooms, and the sasankwa has the smaller blooms but a lot more of them. The japonicas will start blooming in a couple of months, whereas this begins to bloom in around the 1st of October. When nothing else is blooming in the yard, these are going to be blooming, and I'm not sure if you can get a close-up of this beautiful Camellia Sasankwa. And this one's name is Cotton Candy, and I think you'll agree that's just what it looks like. Remember the pink cotton candy you used to get at the fair when you were a little kid, or maybe still do? This is Cotton Candy. And we walk down, and if you can see, we're beginning to see a little bit of fall color on the oak leaf hydrangeas. Are starting to pick up a little bit of orange. And the Sangu Kaku right next to it, that Japanese maple, it's got kind of a chartreuse leaf on it, and in a few weeks it will be solid yellow. This is another Japanese maple that will be very, very red. And we walk through here. Here's another. This one's called, I have to look, I have so many, I've forgotten some of their names, but this is Otaki, and it's got great big leaves, and when I bought it last spring, they were almost a peachy colored, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this fall brings and see what kind of colors we get out of it. But look at the big, this is a japonicum. You notice how big the leaves are compared to, say, these Japanese maples, but will all turn just beautiful shades of purple, red, bright red, orange, yellow, and this yard will be a riot of colors. And I don't know if you can hear behind me the birds singing. I just come sometimes out here and just sit and think about, I concentrate on the yard. I don't meditate, but I just immerse myself into what is in this garden. It's much less money than a therapist and a lot more rewarding. We're gonna walk down here, and you can see the begonias are still blooming, but they're getting a little bit shabby looking. And right next to it is another Carex. You can tell you're at my house. You've heard the recycling truck, my neighbor's air conditioner, my dog, somebody else's dog, and the birds. But you know it's real. This is my yard. Next to it is another Carex, and that will stay that way the entire winter. So if you're looking for winter interest, and right now I'm going to have a good time with Teresa, because every time I say this word I get it wrong. It's a prostrate yew, and the last few times I've gotten that word wrong, but I've learned. This stays like this all winter. So this is, when you're talking about interest, you don't want everything in your yard to be deciduous, and you don't want, that means all the leaves fall off, and you don't want it to be all evergreen. You want a mixture of plants so that you have all sorts of things going on. And if you look back there, the Encore Azalea is throwing out its second bloom, and the oak leaves are beginning to put out their fall color, and I've still left the panicles, and they're kind of brown and papery, but they add a little more interest to the garden and make it more interesting. This is an azalea that I brought from my mother's house, and it was about 6 inches tall. The year after we moved here, that would have been in 1972, and here it is, reminding me of my mother. Now this is going to drop its leaves, but before it does, it's going to be orange. Here's yet another Carex that will stay that way, and everybody loves a cast iron plant. This is an interesting one because it's got splotches all over it. This will stay this color all winter long. And it may get a little shabby towards spring, and you'll have to trim it back. But this is another example of getting winter interest in your garden. All of these are big camellias, and again, they're covered with buds and will soon be blossoms. and this will just be, this one is going to have great big red flowers on it. It's called Kramer Supreme, and it will be quite wonderful. Maybe y'all can come back and visit in January or February when the big camellias are blooming. You know that camellias are Alabama's state flower. Even though they came from China, Japan, and Asia, they are the state flower of Alabama. And we wondered how come, you know, some of us plant people, we don't have a native flower, but the oak leaf hydrangea is Alabama's wildflower, and it is native. So we walk back here, peeking out is the first Lady Claire. I love the names. This is Lady Claire. There was Leslie Ann, Cotton Candy, and this is loaded with flames. My mama used to say that camellias would break your heart. They'd start to bloom just as the frost came out, and you'd come out and they'd be all wilty. These don't make great picked flowers because each bloom doesn't last but a day, but I will come out here and try to gather them up and bring them in and enjoy them for the day that we've got. This was another editing job over here. I had some great big plants that I didn't really love. They've got buckets over them so the dog doesn't trip over the stump. So we took them all out and we put a combination of rhododendrons, native azaleas, and camellias in here. And I'm really excited to see what it's going to do this fall. And I'm going to have my winter color on these camellias, and then I will have the spring color on the native azaleas and on the rhododendrons. I'm afraid that one of the rhododendrons might have a disease on it because the leaves are turning yellow and sort of wilting, and if that does happen, it will have to be removed. And this is a mini Japanese maple, or a dwarf. It's almost full grown, and that's my husband's frog. And we'll walk around. You'll notice that all the camellias are just loaded. This is a contorted azalea. Some of the branches are sort of twisted. It's not really too contorted, but it's going to be loaded with flowers. When I first started to garden, I didn't understand the concept that plants like puppies grow. And everywhere that I could stick a plant, I did. And now I've had to come in and cut some of them back. And that made me sad, but there just wasn't room. Here's another Japanese maple that will lose its leaves. And this is really pretty right here. This is one of the endless summer hydrangeas, and it is called Bloomstruck. And I think the flower is really pretty with the pink and the green on it. More of the Carex. Oh, and here is a dear little Mahonia that's in bloom right now. This is called Soft Touch. Most Mahonias are really sticky, and this one's not. This is a real pollinator jewel. They will be all around these little yellow flowers. I didn't even notice it was blooming. And we've got some ferns coming up, more Linton Roses, more Japanese maples. We're going to walk carefully across the rocks. We had a drainage problem in our yard, and every time it rained, we got everybody's water in the neighborhood came down through here. So this is what's called a dry stream, and it goes underground and out into the alley, but we can have a river. Plus, to me, it's a wonderful hardscape feature in the yard. And the men put these rocks together like a puzzle. And we talked about things that you can do in your yard to add interest. Hardscape feature is always a great one. Here, oh, look how lucky we are today. This is an Edgeworthia. This is a winter bloomer, and I don't know, can you see the little flower? It will bloom about January. It'll have little yellow flowers all over it, which smell absolutely heavenly. I had one to die, so I got another one, and it seems so happy. But I'm going to try to hold it still. There's the little head fixing to come up. When it opens up, there'll be little yellow flowers dangling. But the smell. Talking about fragrance, that's another thing you can add to your garden for interest. You can add a plant like the Edgeworthia that smells good. You can plant a plant like a Carex, or these right here, this Arborvata Fern with texture. This is another thing you can add for texture and even different colors of green, because there's not just one shade of green. And this Arborvata Fern, it's not really a fern, but that's what it's called. It stays like that all winter. And we can see, and this is really pretty, this oak leaf hydrangea is starting to turn for fall. So this will be beautiful in another couple of weeks. And here is yet one more Camellia that is really incredibly gorgeous. This is its first year, so I'm not sure when it's going to bloom, but another Camellia loaded with blooms. So we walk up here. This is called R.L. Wheeler, and the blooms are bigger than my hand, and I always get so excited when this one gets ready to bloom. You see the size of the buds on it. As we walk around, the azaleas have stopped blooming, although this one has got a little flower on it. This one does not want to give up. And here, this is another Sasankwa, and I'm going to actually just, if I can break it, I don't know if you can see the flower or not, but it's really beautiful. And I don't remember the name of this. Some of these plants have been in my yard so long, and I was so excited when I first got them. I got these little tags that you could engrave, and I thought they were like forever, and they weren't forever. And when I couldn't read them anymore, I couldn't remember what the plants were. I got two azaleas blooming here. I think these both might be Encores. I'm not sure. My tags have diminished. That's a beautiful, huge Camellia. This is a pink, and I'm not sure. Can you see the little pink flower? I'm not sure how close the camera can get. Here's a white one. I'll try to turn that down. It's got a little spider vista and little streaks of pink. And that's probably my most beautiful Camellia. And that was a gift from Hayes Jackson, and I'll treasure it always. Walking here, this has got an interesting trunk and an interesting shape, and unfortunately I had to cut it back to make room for everything else. It's really important when you're planting things to know how big they're going to get. And so, when I moved in here, I was very young, and I sometimes didn't understand the concept of things mature, and you have to know that size when you start to plant. And I know it now, but I'm having to come in and do a little pruning. Here's another Encore that's throwing out its second blooms. Here, the pandemic has been a lot of fun for us gardeners. I have spent every day since they mentioned COVID out in my yard, and I found another place that needed to be fixed up. So we have put out a new garden up here, and I filled it up with rhodias, which are another great plant for 4 seasons. This one right here, and it will actually stay green all year, form a great big clump, and it'll look just like that. I've got some autumn ferns in here which will stay this color. They will not go completely dormant. I have some in here that will go dormant. And when you talk about texture and color, most people say acubas. Oh, well, why would I want an acuba? Isn't that an old plant? Well, I found out it's drought tolerant because if these are never watered, and you can see how beautiful they are, plus they make a great screen on this chain link fence. So they don't get watered, and look at them, they're beautiful, plus look at the colors. Yeah, it's an old plant and everybody has one, but take a fresh look at it, it's gorgeous. This is another beautiful camellia, another Sasankwa that started blooming just recently, and it had a tag, but the tag's long since gone, so I just enjoy it for its beauty, and I don't worry about what its name is. The little chartreuse looking plant was a survivor from the tornado. If you'll notice, half of it's gone, but we dug it up and it's alive. Just put out a different Carex because I want things around in the winter, and this will stay around. It's called Ice Dancer, and I've got one over there and one here. I'm making a row of things that will not die back. This is a new plant for me, vintage jade or distolium, and it is an evergreen. I've had it out here about a year, and so far it looks very happy. You can see the ground is a mixture of white petals from the plant over you and pink petals from this sparkling burgundy. When I started buying plants for my yard, it must have been about 1998 when I started Master Gardeners. Up to then, I had been doing a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here and a little bit there. And then I got really, really interested in gardening. And I met up with Jimmy Roberts, who then was the owner of Golden Springs Nursery, and he says, "You gotta have this." And it's been right here ever since then. That was probably about somewhere in the mid-90s. And you can see there are thousands of pink flowers on it. Another Japanese maple, autumn fern that will have some coppery leaves on it. Here's the sparkling burgundy. The flowers are not huge, but they make it up in size. This is what a big clump of the rhodea or Nippon lily looks like, and it will stay this way all year long. We've got more camellias coming up and some blossoms falling on me. And this is kind of an interesting plant right here. I don't know if I'm going to try to get a leaf off of it. This is a camellia, and the leaves look like fishtails. You can see the leaf. I don't think I've ever seen it bloom, but it's interesting. The leaves are interesting. I hold it this way, maybe you can see it looks like a fishtail. And it's gorgeous. I mean, it's an evergreen and it's beautiful. And this one right here that you can see is variegated. This is a sinensis, and this is what they use to make tea out of. It's a tea flower. And you see it's got a little tiny flower on it, but it's used to make tea. I've never tried to brew tea from it, but I think the variegation in the leaves adds one more special touch to the garden. And if you can just turn around, maybe get a shot of that Sasankwa right behind you, and you can get some idea of how many flowers are on it. It's quite astounding. And just when you least expect it, you're covered with flowers. That you need to see for winter interest. We also have another azalea here that's blooming really hard. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but it's just been throwing out sporadic blooms for weeks. This is normally what that hydrangea that I showed you up front, this is normally what it looks like, and for some reason that held on to a leaf. And this is called ruby slippers, and you see it's putting on some of its fall foliage. This is a neat plant too. The berries are about to go. It's American Beauty berry, and it was covered with little purple berries. And that camellia right over there is variegated, so it adds more texture to the winter garden. And this is my Hosta farm, a caladium farm, which people have seen. But it's done very well this year, and the hostas are going into dormancy. But some of them are still looking great, so I've got here again summer perennials mixed in and still going strong. This is a conifer. I believe it's called Black Dragon. It's kind of neat in the winter. It's got an interesting shape, and it of course stays evergreen, and we got the little tiny cones forming. And anything variegated increases what you can see in the winter. And we see these are beautifully colored yellow and green, and this is a camellia. I'm hoping it's a reticulata, which has a great big fluorescent bloom. I don't see a lot of blooms on it yet, but I'm hoping that it's going to form them. It's not a heavy bloomer, whereas this one right here, Taylor's Perfection, it will be covered with flowers. And you see there are many, many, many flowers. This is actually, I think it's called savory. I've had it for years, but the little flowers are perfect for butterflies and other things that are looking for a snack. It's got the little tube-shaped flowers. This is the last thing I wanted you to, well, we've got two more. This is a tea olive, and the flowers are teensy. I mean, they really are tiny, but they smell so great, and they will smell all through the winter, sporadically. It's not like covered. When it was blooming several weeks ago, the smell was actually overwhelming in the yard. Actually, just, you walked out and you said, wow, what's that? But it will bloom off and on for several months. Plus, it's a beautiful evergreen. It can be used for a screen or a hedge, although I wouldn't cut it into a hedge, or a focal point, just to hide an ugly view of something. Because we kept mine cut so I could see off the porch, but my sister has one that's about 12 feet tall, so it can get quite large. And for those of you who are wondering what this is, it's my Bromeliad Collection, which is fixing to go on the porch. And we're going to close with something very beautiful. Jean May, another Sasankwa I bought in a 1-gallon pot, I don't know how many years ago. And she's now covered with these delicate pink blooms. And every day when I walk out on that porch, this is what I see. And it truly does make me happy. I know it's hard to say, how can you be happy when the world is upside down? That's what a garden can do for you. It can make you happy. So let it make you happy 4 seasons of the year, 365 days of the year. By just thinking ahead, you can have something in your garden blooming or growing every single day of the year. And that's my advice to everybody. Don't let them just be azaleas in the spring. Let them be everything. You always have something to smile about. And thank you for the library for coming out to my house and filming, because it's not perfect out here. As you know, you heard the dogs barking. my neighbor leaving her car and the recycling truck come up and down the street 3 or 4 times, and several vehicles. But it is nice to come out of the auditorium and walk through a yard and see how things actually grow. You can like me on Facebook as the Southern Gardener and see pictures of flowers and gardening tips. And please applaud and thank Teresa Kaiser and the library for the wonderful job they do for this community. I think it's one of the best places we've got. Thank you.